All right, so yeah, my name is Brianna Lehman. I'm here to present to you my project called Nurturing Plants, Hydroponics to Increase Food Security and Diné Food Sovereignty in the Navajo Nation. And so before I begin, I just kind of want to provide you of who I am and my positionality in my research and also in my identity. So I'm start off with my clans is Tachini Nishla Nidot Dine Bashichin Batani Dasche Auto Torichin Dashnala Brianna Layman Yanishia. So yeah, my name's Bree. I come from Shiprock, New Mexico. I'm a Diné scholar from the Navajo Nation. And just to give you some context, I come from Shiprock, which is a farming community. I come from a family that is really rooted in our Diné knowledge, our language, our beliefs and practices. But also I grew up within a single parent household. So my mother raised me, which along with my aunt. So I was brought up into a matriarchal society. But also with that, we were farmers when we were extremely young. I'll move to the next photo to show you, but pretty much what my mom and my aunts and my grandmas have taught me is respecting the land, respecting the water, and all living entities. And so kind of with that is kind of led me to some values that I hold dear to my heart and just which are respecting myself, my family, my community, that I have a big responsibility to my family and myself and what I do and what I try to, share my knowledge in terms of reciprocity of like what I learned from my family and everything is that I want to use it in a good and ethical way so that I could provide back with what I have in terms of my education and what I want to do in terms of my public health degree, and then also just using that within my community. So here's kind of a photo of our farmland. Here you can see it's, bare, we're pretty bare, but we're starting to put the furrows in, starting up the farming land, and that's pretty much how I grew up. And here's a picture of my mom and me and my aunt and my other cousins. So we grew up as farmers at a very young age, and we were taught, again, the importance of the land and how important it is to have good relationships with the land, because with that you will get a very beautiful harvest of corn, squash, and melons and whatever you decide to grow. But with that, it just kind of comes with the beauty of how you grow with the land and what it becomes and what you become as well. And so with that, it kind of led me to pursue this down this road of public health and agriculture and how you can combine the two. And I'll go into more how I came about with hydroponics, but I just want to go into what exactly hydroponic is, just to give you an idea and an idea of why I got into it. But let's just start off with hydroponics. Pretty much is growing plants without soil, meaning that you're able to control the root zone with water, nutrient-based water, oxygen, and the temperature. So you can see here is the roots of the lettuce that is growing, and you can see that it's like a creamy white, and that means that's very healthy root that's growing in the hydroponic system. And to supply nutrients to the hydroponic or to the plants is that you have to have a nutrient-based mineral water. So it contains all these minerals, which I'll go over in a bit. And then in order to start growing your plants, you do need a medium to support the roots. So this could look like sand, gravel, percolite, or rock wool. And so the next thing is like, well, what do plants need? And I'm pretty sure we all know that plants need, water, sunlight, air, nutrients, a growth medium, and some rock wool and vermiculite. However, with the hydroponic system, you do need a little additional things of a growth medium. But let's just talk about the nutrients first. So these are some of the nutrients that you find in the soil. However, within the soil, you're lacking a lot of nutrients. And with hydroponics, you already have a nutrient-based solution already available to you. So here you have the micronutrients of NPK, which is you have nitrogen, you have phosphorus, you have potassium, and they all play a big level in terms of providing a certain thing for the plants, and that could look like building plant cells, helping with the healthy root grow, and then also, going through the process of photosynthesis. And then on the side you have here is the micronutrients, which is calcium, magnesium, copper, iron, boron, and zinc. And so these are some of the nutrients that are really needed but also lack in soil. So this is kind of what the difference is in terms of growing in the soil, whereas growing without soil. So there's a difference, but I will go into that a little bit more. But first, I want to talk about the growth medium. So when you start growing, starting your plant little seedlings, where do you start if you don't start within the soil? So there's some materials that you can use to start up with, and one of them could be rock wool. So this is just kind of a fibrous mineral substance that you can throw in the seeds in there and start growing your seeds. All you do is just really have to soak the rock wool and let the seeds pretty much develop over time. You can put the seeds in hydroclay stones, but that can be a little difficult to use depending on what types of plants you want to use. You can also use percolite, and this is really great to add to your rock wool to support, because it has a lot more minerals in it to support the seedlings and to support your plants at the same time. So these are some of the things that you have to consider when growing hydroponically. Okay, so next is there are different types of hydroponic systems. And I want to go through them and just to give you an idea what kind of systems work best for certain plants, or what system may work best for you in terms of what resources are available. So here we have a wick system, a water culture, an ebb and flow, a drip system, a nutrient film technique, and an aeroponic. And I will go through them one by one, but let me turn on a light. So the wick system, so this system's pretty cool. And you could pretty much grow any leafy greens, some lettuce, some herbs. But with this system here, you can build it however way you want it. You can put it in cups, you can put it in a container. And the cool thing is, like, you don't need a water pump for this. So this is doesn't use a water pump system, which needs energy, electricity. So this one is pretty much, you have this wick, and this wick in here, it could be a string, it could be material that absorbs the water and then just kind of feeds into the root zone of the plant. So you can see here's the nutrient water, and then here's the wick, which is this stringy system, and it kind of feeds into the root zone of the plants. And so this is just one little simple system that you could use. You could start off with just, using cups and using little net pots to start your seedling, or to start your plants to growing. So that's a cool little system you can do. The next system is called a water culture, and this is pretty much the simplest type. However, with this one, the limitation to this is that you have to have an air pump, and that means you need electricity. So with this one is pretty much same concepts. You have a water reservoir, you have your plants up here that are kind of suspended in the air, but you have an air stone within the water reservoir, and it's kind of like bringing up the oxygen or bringing up the water to the roots. And so that's just kind of another way how to grow hydroponically. But however, it doesn't require a pump, but it needs like an air pump to pump the water up in the system. So this type of system can be used differently. There's multiple ways people can build this system that pretty much fits the need of what you're trying to do. Cool. So moving on to the next system is the ebb and flow, which is the drain and flow, this one's pretty cool. You have your water reservoir. You do have to have a pump, and you do have to have a timer. And so pretty much you have your water reservoir, you have your pump pumping up to the next little water reservoir up here, but you have your little plant systems. And so you pretty much, the pump is just pumping up all the water into this, filling up and then it's draining back down. So it's kind of going in this using gravity, and the water is going back down, and it's pretty much how the plants are getting watered. And yeah, it's pretty much within the title of it, a drain and flow. It requires a timer and a pump. That's kind of the only limitation to using the system, but it just varies on what you're trying to grow and what you're trying to do. And then the next one is a drip system, which I'm pretty sure everybody has heard of a drip system, which you can use in your garden. This one is where, same concept, you have a water reservoir and you have a pump going into the top of your hydroponic where your plants are at, and then you have little hoses going to each individual plants, and it waters the plants consistently throughout the day. It just depends on what you're growing and where you're at in terms of growing your plants. So this could pretty much depending on the environment you're at, and if it's inside or outside, it could be watered at least twice every hour. Or if it's extremely hot outside, you'll probably have to be watering at least 4 or 5 times throughout the hour, with at least a minute or two with the water pump going on. So this one's pretty cool because then once the plants get watered, then the water goes back into the water reservoir. So it's pretty much recycling that water over time. And then moving on into the next one is the nutrient film technique, which this one's really cool because you could build this system on your own. You can see right here, they're using PVC pipes, using piping system to pipe their hydroponic system. So pretty much is that they have multiple pipes here, and that they are drilling little holes in here to put their plants in there. So with the water going into the top of the first pipe, and then you can see here, there's little connecting pipes to the next pipe. So the water just goes down, kind of zigzags down back into the water reservoir here. And then it just goes in that cycle multiple times, and it pretty much recycles the water out. And I also want to let you know that this, depending on how many plants you're planting, and depending how big your system is and how big your water reservoir is, your water could last you like a month, or your water could last you like 2 weeks, depending how big your system is and how many plants you're growing in that initial growth stage. But when it starts to, your plant's starting to get big and kind of flower, that's when your water reservoir will start need to be filled more often. So this could look like refilling it every week or maybe every 2 weeks. It just depends on what you're growing and how many plants. So the cool thing is that you're recycling this water over and over, and it has nutrients in it to support the plants. So moving on is the aeroponic system. And this system's really cool because you're growing vertically up. As you saw, some of them were growing horizontally. With this system, you can see that the system here, it's a very enclosed space, and that pretty much this water is shooting up to the top of this pipe, and then it's just trickling down, hitting each of these pockets where the plants are, and then it's absorbing the water and kind of retaining that water, and then whatever is not being used kind of drips back down into this water reservoir. So it's pretty much sprinkling water into the roots area. There is a timer with this one, and it does require a pump for this system, but I really like this system because you're growing vertically up, and it kind of meets your, you can kind of tailor the system to your height. So if you're a short person like me, perfect, great, because you're able to see all your plants within your height and everything like that. Alrighty. So moving on is like, what kind of crops can be grown in a hydroponic system? Well, there's a lot of crops you can grow. You can grow leafy green, kale, spinach, lettuce, Swiss chard, a bunch of things. You can grow tomatoes, but in terms of growing tomatoes, you wouldn't want to grow tomatoes in a aeroponic system like this because it would get super crazy. So you would want to kind of consider what type of plants, what type of produce would be best that would work with a certain hydroponic system. You can grow cucumbers, you can grow squash, you can grow herbs, and you can grow strawberries. So there's a lot you can grow with. However, there is a limitation of certain things you can't grow, such as corn. However, people are playing with the idea of growing corn in a hydroponic system, but you know, there's so much you can do with it, so many things that could work and not work within certain systems. But I kind of want to show you these photos here because this was one of our participants from our project, and she grew squash. She grew yellow squash, and she grew it in her home. So you can see her hydroponic system. And the funny thing is that she doesn't remember what she grew, but once they started growing, she started identifying, oh, well, this is the squash, this is the beans, and then this is the peas. And so she had like a whole jungle of her hydroponic system in her home. And so she was really excited to see what she was growing and how it was growing, how fast it was growing. And kind of with that is just an idea of what can be grown. All right, so moving on to why grow hydroponically, there's many advantages, but also other disadvantages as well. So we'll start off with the advantages of pretty much if you grow hydroponically, it grows twice as fast as traditional growing, just because you're giving the root zone, the roots, the nutrients much faster. You're pretty much hitting them with the water that they need. And the roots don't have to necessarily work as hard compared to if they're in the soil, whereas they're looking for the nutrients in the soil. They're looking for that water. So they're actually working twice as hard just to look for that. So that's why they take their time with growing compared to hydroponically. It kind of leads into watering our roots. Pretty much you're directly hitting the roots with that nutrient water. You can grow in smaller areas. As you can see in one of the aeroponic systems, that there is probably, I believe, like 20 plants on that system within like a 2x2 foot system. So you could grow extremely high up, vertically up, and have like 20 to 30 plants growing. But then you have to consider, well, can I reach it? But you can also use like a ladder to reach certain things, to reach the plants. But that's just the cool thing about these hydroponic systems. You can grow in smaller areas. Another thing to consider is it's very efficient in water, meaning that it recycles the water that it uses, and that if you were to use like a 20-gallon tote, it would pretty much last you the month, and that would get your plants through the month. And then you would just pretty much refill it again and again. And I believe it takes around like 4 to 5 times for you to actually get a harvest or 4 to 5 times to refill it to get a harvest from your plants, depending on what you're growing. But then again, it's very easy to maintain, meaning that you're just kind of checking on your water. You do have to test the pH of it, determine whether it's acidic or alkalic, and you want to make sure it's between a certain range of a 5.5, or excuse me, between a 4 and a 5.5. Because you just want to ensure that it's within the range of these plants can grow in a certain environment, and you want to make sure this water is cool. So that's kind of the thing you have to watch out for. You really don't have to really like hoe weeds, pull weeds, and that's the cool thing about this system. So some disadvantages that we have to consider when using systems like this, new innovative systems, is that you have to have a deeper knowledge. You have to figure out what works, what type of plants work with what system, what type of water solution works great for this certain plants. And you kind of have to understand that there are waterborne diseases like fungi, chromatisms, bacteria, and viruses that can pose a threat, not only to the water, but also to the plants. So if your plant's looking a little, I don't know, like looking like droopy, well, there's something going on, and it could be like, well, it's maybe lacking oxygen. Maybe there's enough oxygen, airflow in the air, in the environment, in the air. Or it could be there's a lot of fungi or a lot of algae growing, and it's because there's so much sunlight that it's really creating a lot of these waterborne diseases. And if the water does get contaminated, that pretty much contaminates your whole system, and you have to start over again. So that's why it's really great to watch your system every week and be consistent with it. So it's just being really consistent, knowing what's going on with your system. And then another thing is some of these systems require electricity for the water pump. So if we are going to use this in the Navajo Nation in a very rural area for those who don't have electricity, that's something you really have to consider in terms of what's available to the local community in terms of electricity. Does this work within the community and stuff like that? And then another thing is that it's very limited in fruits and vegetables. There's certain things you cannot grow in it. So those are the limitations that we do have to consider. Cool. So that's just a quick introduction to hydroponics and what it is and what it can provide and the advantages to the disadvantages. But I kind of want to give you a little insight. How did I get into hydroponics, especially as a farmer who grows traditional crops in the soil and really enjoys being outdoors on the land and stuff like that? However, so pretty much I was given these hydroponic systems, or pretty much my family was given these hydroponic systems, and my brother was given, well, actually he was given these systems. And over time, I was very curious about these hydroponics. So I asked my brother, let me try these hydroponic systems out. I really want to know how they work and how they function. So I put them together and I was just really amazed by how many plants you can grow in this system in a short little area. And I grew lettuce, I grew kale, and I grew squash right here. So you can see the little squash kind of forming. And it was growing great. It was doing great. It was thriving. But then came the squash bugs. And they were hiding in the rock wool because the rock wool absorbs the water and the water is nice and cool. And so the squash bugs were just chilling in there and having a good time, but they were really affecting the plants and it killed the whole system. So I was like, darn it, okay, now I got to put like a net covering over it. So there was a lot of trial and error with these systems, but I was like, this is so freaking great. But I wonder how much these systems are. So I looked it up, and just for the system alone was like $600. And that doesn't like include the seeds, the nutrients, the net pots, the rock wool, the things to get it started. And to get the whole shebang with this company, which is called Tower Garden, it was going to be $1,000. And I was like, my goodness, like, yeah, I cannot afford any of these systems. If I were to even wanting to purchase one, I would have to save up so much money. But then knowing the area that I come from, we wouldn't purchase these things at this amount. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to try and duplicate this system. And I'm going to, go to Home Depot and Lowe's, buy some PVC pipes and build my own system. And so I did. And I was like, this is great. Like, why not teach our community how to grow hydroponically? Like, why not learn how to grow differently, but sustainably? And well, how do I incorporate this in the community, knowing that this is a different type of method? So I was kind of just playing with the idea and just trying to think of ways of like, well, how do I do this? How do I get funding? And so that just kind of led into a lot of ideas and a lot of things for me to think about. But ultimately, I wanted to understand, why should we be integrating this into our community, into a tribal and our indigenous Diné community? So I had to do some research, and so we have to acknowledge settler colonization and why we have these disparities in our community. So as indigenous people, we have endured 500 years of colonialism, settler colonialisms that led to genocide. It led to assimilation, to adopt these American policies of the Scorched Earth policies, the Dawes Act, and the Indian Removal Act, in which really disrupted our land, our people, and it also, part of those policies was the boarding school policies, which was taking and removing pretty much destruction of the family system, declining who we are as Diné people, as indigenous people, and our language. And it led to many health disparities, and it led to a lot of environmental degradation because of militarization and extraction from our land, because indigenous people live in very beautiful landscapes that tend to be dense in nutrient-rich areas. And then with that kind of led to a decline in our traditional foods and our cultural knowledge because of what we've endured and what we face today. And so kind of leading to today is that in the Navajo Nation, food security is a very pressing issue. We know that there's around 13 grocery stores, but there's a lot of trading posts, there's a lot of convenience stores that somewhat don't offer a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables. And if they do, it's pretty expensive. And it's just like, well, if this fresh fruit is very expensive, I'm going to go for the dollar chips because it's more cheaper and I get more. But we also consider that the Navajo Nation is rural and remote, but we also have to be cognizant that our people do like to live in a rural or remote area because of just that's how we grew up. That's how it's always been. It's certain areas haven't been touched by certain things. So that's just something we have to consider. But however, we do have to acknowledge that we do lack a lot of infrastructure in terms of housing, water, electricity, a lot of things. And kind of leading into the next thing is like the impact is also diet-related illnesses. We have various rates of diabetes, obesity, cancer, and this contributes to what we've endured for the longest time, and that kind of puts us at the front line of climate change, not just Diné people, but Indigenous people in general. And so in Indigenous communities, we are in a very resource-rich area, meaning we are in high demand of extraction. We are very we have a lot of we have a lot of minerals, we have a lot of resources. And there's a lot of people out there who want to extract that. And we've faced a lot of drought due to extraction companies near or on the reservation. And so some of us know that there's over 500 abandoned uranium mines, and some of those mines have contaminated water wells. It contaminated our land, and some have been exposed so much that it has led to these disparities. And so those are some of the things that we have to consider, and I have to consider when it comes to implementing new technology in the Navajo Nation. In terms of it being feasible, is it acceptable within the community, and does the community consent to this type of new technology? And so with that, I also want to highlight, the benefits in our community and how we're very self-reliant on our land and how we respect the land in a good way. And so that kind of leads into Diné food sovereignty. I was going to do a little word cloud, but I think in considering time, I'll pass through that. But I kind of want to talk about Diné food sovereignty and what it means to me and what it might mean to you as well. So Diné food sovereignty is in the terms of what Diné people are, is like defining our own policies and strategies to a sustainable production, distribution, and consumption of food with respect to our culture, our values, traditions, and language. And that the Diné food sovereignty framework or concept can be a precondition to increasing food security on the Navajo Nation. And that pretty much we're able to control our own food systems. And that I highly believe that the Navajo Nation and that within Shiprock, New Mexico and surrounding communities can feed the Navajo Nation, can feed our own people. However, we have to acknowledge that we face a lot of lack of infrastructure, a lot of water infrastructure, irrigation infrastructure, a lot of capital to certain grants, to a lot of new technology that could really help us to increase our food security and our access to fresh food and stuff like that. But also, it can also lead to establishing culturally appropriate and sustainable systems that empower our people, and that pretty much empowering our people by placing people, traditional healers, cooks, and farmers and ranchers at the center of decision making in terms of policy, with tribal policy, with agriculture policy, not only policies but strategies and management, and in a way that the Diné food sovereignty framework restores the concept of hojo, which is balance and promote Diné self-sufficiency through upholding sacred responsibility to nurturing healthy interdependent relationships within ourselves, but also with the land, the plants, and the animals. And so that's just kind of what Diné food sovereignty is and what we've always been practicing for the longest time. And so I want to kind of highlight this photo right here is the Shiprock Farmers Market. There's tons of farmers that come out with their fresh produce. However, we always see squash, corn, and melons, which is amazing. It's great, but there could also be a diverse of different leafy greens. There could be kale, there could be Swiss chard, there could be herbs, a lot of that. But I think in terms of we're just so used to growing our traditional foods, which is great, but we need to be more open in terms of what we could grow in our area and how we could increase soil health. And then here's another picture of my niece. She assists in growing, and she contributes to Diné food sovereignty just by growing her own little garden in the backyard and just being a part of that. So that's just one of many ways to contribute to Diné food sovereignty. I could either be supporting the farmers, buying from farmers, or growing in your backyard, or even supporting local nonprofits or farming organizations and stuff like that. So kind of with that, with the idea of like, yeah, let's train some people how to grow hydroponically, it pretty much developed into a project for me. I applied to some grants, and I applied to the one grant called MIT Solve, and I received a grant, and from there it just blew up, and just one idea kind of led to multiple ideas, and it just flourished into this project which is now called Nurturing Plants, which is to address multiple issues that is impacting the Navajo people, including obesity, diabetes, food insecurity, and climate change, while trying to revitalize and reclaim traditional foods and leafy greens into the daily consumption of Navajo people. So this program has different curriculums depending on who's requesting this workshop. But in terms of this one, it was conducted at Diné College, Shiprock Land Grant Office, and also at Navajo Ethno-Agriculture, which is a Native-led nonprofit located in Nananazad. And so we developed a partnership, and we decided, let's give this Nurturing Plants workshop a try. So it led into 4 workshops, and it built in sequence of the next workshop to gain more knowledge in hydroponics, food sovereignty, and Diné traditional knowledge. But it wasn't just me leading the workshop as well in terms of hydroponics. I've had presenters come in and teach about botany, or teach about how to do how to cook with certain foods, especially leafy greens, into your consumption of your food daily. So it was a 3-month program. It happened Saturday mornings. It used to be a 7 o'clock workshop, but we pushed it an hour, and it became from 8 to 12. And pretty much these workshops integrated the Navajo culture practices of Hojogo'ina, which is Navajo healing and restoring balance and harmony within ourselves. And I'll talk more about that in terms of how do we make this project tailored to our Diné communities, and how did it work, and was it feasible, and was it acceptable? So in order to build a program or a curriculum that's based on the community, is that we had to design an Indigenous advisory board and partner with many individuals, and partner with different nonprofits and organizations that are local in the community. And so with that, we had 6 board members. They were community members from the area. They were either public health professionals or traditional healers, or they were expert farmers and gardeners. And they were all Indigenous, all from the community, and they provided that Indigenous perspective to the curriculum. And so this was highly needed, because it wasn't just me leading the thing, it was all of us collectively building this curriculum. And so some organizations that I partnered with was Navajo Ethno-Agriculture, Diné Introspective, and on here I didn't put Diné College, but they were part of creating this as well. So I really want to get into this in terms of how do we build this curriculum, is that it came from Diné frameworks. It came from who we are as people. And we use the concept of Diné food sovereignty, which kind of briefly went over, is to restore Hojan, which is a balance, and to promote Diné self-sufficiency through upholding sacred responsibility to nurturing healthy interdependent relationships with the land, the food, and the animals. And then what we also used was the Diné Hojan wellness philosophy, which encompasses around 6 concepts of spirituality, respect, reciprocity, discipline, thinking, and relationships. And just to briefly go over them, is that spirituality is pretty much respecting and honoring the spirit through prayer, paying homage to the spirit, your spirit, a ritual, ceremony, and spiritual guidance. Respect, meaning you're being reverence and offering respect to yourself, others, natures, animals, the creator, and your whole environment. And then reciprocity is that constant gratification and respectful exchange in terms of receiving support, giving the acts of kindness, helpfulness, and just being appreciative of the things that you're learning. And then the next one is discipline. It's just kind of being committed to achieving life goals and sustaining them throughout your lifetime in terms of being like self-care, physical activity, and helping others. And then the next one was thinking in terms of cognitive function. How are we going to plan certain things? How are we going to plan for the future? And what types of things should we consider in this program? And then lastly, relationships. And we really wanted relationships to be in this in terms of Ket, because we're building a community of people who may not know each other, who may live in the same area but not know each other, but we're going to build upon Ket through the family, through the clanship, through community. And it's just to provide a sense of community with the program that we built. And so out of that, it pretty much recognizes and honors the healing energy that in this program and restorative properties to Mother Earth and nature and stuff like that. So out of the Diné Hojan wellness philosophy, I'm sure some of you heard of these concepts called Hojogo Ina, which is Nabo healing and restoring. And then Hojogo Nahatsilid, which is happiness, health, harmony, and peace and well-being. So we really wanted to use these concepts and these practices in our program development, because that's kind of what we're taught in the beginning of life and as we progress throughout life. And that's what we integrated in our curriculum and tried to build upon it through providing guest speakers, sharing different types of knowledges with one another. And with that, we were like, well, what do we want out of this program? So we wanted to build food security. We wanted to build Indigenous food sovereignty through training Indigenous people about hydroponics and traditional ecological knowledge, which is pretty much the Diné focus on practices, culture, and values and stuff like that. And our outcomes were, we were wanting to train Indigenous individuals and communities in hydroponics, but also with the nexus of food, water, and energy systems. We want to increase fresh produce access through hydroponic systems. We also want to revitalize Diné practice values and all of that through hydroponics. And we want to also, increase understanding about climate change, historical disruptions, and about Indigenous food sovereignty and how you can contribute to a sustainable future, or what does the future look like to you in terms of agriculture and using these concepts. And so that led to the development of this workshop, and this flyer was for our next cohort of individuals. It was a 4-day four workshops. First one was an introduction to hydroponics, learn about climate change, learn about planting. This is pretty much where you start your seedlings. We all plant together. We all come together as a community and learn together, you know, who's in the community, what's your name, what's your clans, just getting to know one another, but planting our seedlings in the little rock bowls. And then the next session is you're building the hydroponic system. So we taught these individuals how to build these systems, how to maintain it, but we also knew that maybe some people don't have access to energy or electricity. So we wanted to integrate solar panels into this in terms of it powering the hydroponic system. And with that, we taught them the basics. However, we didn't get to the part of actually going to their homes and putting the solar panels in the systems and powering the systems. But with that, we were able to transplant what they had from their seedlings to their hydroponic system and then just show them how it functions and how it works. And then the third workshop is that they come back and they learn how to troubleshoot and maintain their systems. They learn about common pests and nutrient deficiencies that they may find in their hydroponic systems or maybe that they're experiencing. But also we had another workshop where we taught them about cover crops and what cover crops can do. And maybe if you are a farmer and you have a farm and you're lacking nutrients, how can you put nutrients back into the soil using plants to nourish the soil and improve your soil health? So that was one of the things that we taught, but we kind of took that out of there because it was a lot of information that we got from our feedback. So we kind of took that out, but we also we still want to integrate that into our curriculum as well. But moving on to the last one is pretty much the last workshop is a harvesting practices. How do you harvest from the system, and how do you even use this, how the produce that you use within your food? Like so we had an indigenous chef come out and give us a demonstration of how to use these fresh produce in your daily consumption of the food that you eat. But the last workshop is always great because we always have a community gathering. So we have like a big meal. Like the last time we had was we butchered a sheep. So we butchered a sheep and everybody came and enjoyed the meal. Just kind of came together, and with that they build connections to one another. They got to know who lived down the road or who's over here, and they got to reconnect through all of that. And we got to evaluate this program and to see how well it built into increasing food security, a sense of community, and was it acceptable within the community in terms of using our Diné culture and values in this program. So that's kind of what came out of it. And I kind of want to leave you all with questions to think about in terms of the hydroponic systems. Like, what is the relationship between the land and the hydroponic system? How will elders view new forms of growing that changes or challenges tradition? And how does growing food hydroponically connect you and your family and your culture? And then thinking about how can you contribute to indigenous food sovereignty? And it's pretty much towards the end of the presentation, but here's some photos. And this is kind of the first cohort of the individuals who came to the first session. Here we just kind of have them planting their seeds, and this is how they came back later for the second session, and this is how their plants came out. And then with the second session, they were learning how to build the system. So it was really great. We built these systems at Navajo Ethno's agriculture site, and they got to learn so much. And some of the participants still send us their progress of their hydroponic system of what they grew and how they harvest it and what they put into their meals. And we even had little kids come, and we had individuals take some seeds home for themselves, for their farms. And it was really nice because we got to learn a lot from others. And these are kind of just more photos of what came about the program. And yeah, here's a photo of we had a graphic designer come out and just review, kind of observe the environment and what we were doing and what we're talking about. And he was able to create a really nice graphic of what nurturing plants is and what it could be in the future. So yeah, that's pretty much what Nurturing Plants project is and how it can contribute to food security and net food sovereignty. And then I also want to acknowledge the people who helped me build this program, this curriculum, and the partnerships that have been made out of it. And then also I want to acknowledge the funders who really supported the program and the idea that came out of this. And I just want to say that if you ever have an idea, just go with it and see where it goes, because you never know where you might end up, or wherever you might end up. But yeah, that's pretty much it. The end of my session.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brianna. That was such a great presentation and how you just tied it on all together with the net food sovereignty. So yeah, I mean, having access to fresh fruits and vegetables is very limited, especially from small towns like where I'm from in Crown Point. You don't get always first access to the fresh fruits because they don't let you know when the fresh produce are coming in, and by the time we get there, then all the what's left of the fruits are just basically either starting to get moldy or at that stage of accumulating it. So thank you so much for providing this presentation. I did release a poll. If I could get you guys in the audience to fill out this poll for me on how you have going to use this information into your garden operation and what your knowledge is before and after this presentation. And if you have any additional comments, list them in there. If you wish to want us to dig deeper into another topic that's related to gardening, definitely fill in the additional comment portion, and we use all of your information to schedule out what our following year is going to look like as far as workshops. So your input matters, especially under chapter affiliation, where we get a good visual of where majority of our audience are from and where they're tuning in as well. So please fill out our poll for us. They are really helpful to us. If you guys have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself or insert them in the chat box. Colleen, thank you for your insightful presentation. I know very little about hydroponics and love how your idea progressed into something beautiful. Thank you, Colleen. Joe Lehman, this would be a great project for students in middle school. Yes, this would definitely be a good start for them. Just having the experience to work with middle school, probably like a good fifth time I've worked with middle school kids. They are really engaged in hands-on presentations and workshops. So this will definitely be up their alley, because I just seen in your pictures that a lot of youth had partake in building those hydroponic systems. So Brianna, you are going to have a lot of helping hands. Any questions? Okay, well, I have a question then. It's not close to 6:30 yet, but Brianna, as far as like hydroponics, do you consider this fit for a beginner gardener, say like someone that doesn't have any expertise in gardening? Would this be a route that they can take?
Yeah, I think starting off with hydroponics could be a good way, considering if someone's beginner, especially those don't have access to land.
Mm-hmm.
and they don't have necessarily the resources to do it. But I mean, I feel like them taking part of the hydroponic program would be really great because we offer all of these materials and everything for free. We just ask them, to show up and consistently be at the workshops because it just builds into sequence into the next workshop. So yeah, I mean, we really changed our hydroponic systems every cohort. So the next cohort is putting your hydroponic systems on your counter. So that's kind of the next system we're leaning into now.
Nice. So, another question is that if, say, like a beginner gardener were want to, say, go into growing herbs and squash, how would you kind of navigate that? Would you consider putting the squash at the bottom of the hydroponic or herbs on the top or having herbs at the bottom? Like, how would you structure that?
Oh, excuse me. Yeah, it just really depends on what you want to grow and whether the plants like each other. Because I know some plants like to fight for certain nutrients, and so
Mhm.
they don't get along so well. So it just depends. But if you were to grow long plants like squash or melons, you would grow them at the bottom so that they're
They're heavier.
yeah, they're heavier and their arms could spread out even more on the ground. And for anything like kale or herbs, anything like that, kind of shorter, would go on the top if you were to use a aeroponic system. But if you were
Mhm.
to use a different type of system, it really depends on what type of plants you want to
I
use
see.
and what type of
So,
system.
so how'd you deal with the squash bugs when's you've gone through that trial? What was the next time around? How'd you I guess defeat those squash bugs?
Yeah, so I ended up buying like a little, what do you call it? Like a net. So I just put a little bug net around the hydroponic system, covered it really well, and yeah, the squash bugs came, but they never got into the plant. So that was really nice to see, just using something simple to really combat those nasty squash bugs. But yeah, that was just one of the things I did, and I can't remember if the squash grew or not. I don't remember, but there's a lot of things consider when there's a lot of when things don't grow and you're just trying to figure them out. And sometimes it doesn't work out and you have to start all over again.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like how else will we learn and what plants are compatible with what plants? So definitely a trial and error. I mean, there's no other way to go through that instead of just giving it a try and going with your gut of saying like, okay, I hope you guys are compatible with each other. Um, but thank you so much, Brianna, for hopping on here and taking the time out of your busy schedule to provide this presentation. And thank you everyone from the chat box for being so kind. A lot of great comments to share. And I'm not sure if you want to share anything. I know you mentioned that you have different cohorts, especially when it comes to your presentations. I noticed that you have like 4 presentation, each of them go more in depth. Do you think you're gonna have one this coming year?
Yeah, I think I could. I mean, I think I maybe, I'm not sure yet. It just depends on what you're looking at in terms of because this project, it became a study, and we have data to provide of what came out of the study, but we also like to be very protective of what we share in terms of community consent and a lot of things that we like to consider. But yeah, we can go super into detail. If you want to learn how to grow hydroponically, we can for sure try that out, and it being virtually too as well.
Nice. Okay, excellent. Well, does anybody on here want to ask a question? We can take one more question. If not, that will conclude our presentation for tonight. Okay, all right. Well, that will conclude our presentation tonight. I just want to say a big thank you to Brianna for providing this presentation, and that will conclude our presentation today. And Brianna, if you want to stick around, we're just going to share a couple of housekeeping information on our behalf on what we're going to share for the upcoming events. So thank you everyone for tuning in. And that concludes our hydroponics garden system for tonight. And moving on to our upcoming events. So this November, what we had in the beginning of November, I should say, we had cattle marketing presentation, both that took place in Ninazad Chapter House and Nayizi Chapter House. If you were there, I hope you had a great presentation or great time partaking in the workshop itself. We have next is Herd Health Workshop. So this one's taking place at Herfinale Chapter House starting November 16th from 10 a.m. through 12 p.m. If you have a chance, stop by. We're going to be talking about herd health and the concentration and vaccination protocol for cattle. We're also going to have sheep and goat vaccination workshop. That's going to be towards the end of November, and this is going to be on the 29th. This will start at 10 a.m. through 12 p.m. at Gadi Ahe Chapter House. Lunch will be provided, so if this is something that you guys are interested in partaking in, feel free to drop by. We'll just be talking about vaccination protocol, but this one's going to be more focused towards geared to sheep and goats. And we'll have somewhat of a small, short demonstration on wound care and what you can do as far as like mending minor cuts or injuries. Not per se of major damage to any of the external part of the sheep or goat. That is something that we recommend that you visit the veterinarian with. We won't have any antibiotics or vaccination with us during the short demonstration, just kind of a short protocol of how to wrap it and bandage a wound. So if you're interested, please stop by for our workshop that's going to take place on the 29th. And we are located on we do have a website, I should say. We are all remote working, but we do have an operating website. If you guys go to your URL and type in nsa.nmsu.edu, it will take you directly to this platform here. We're known as the Navajo Sustainable Agriculture Project. In short, we're called the NSA Project. You'll see all of our information in our homepage. It talks about who we are, what funding program we're under, and you'll meet the team. Our current project, who we once were, the Native American Producer Success Project, our current conservation planning program that we are collaborating with the Nate College Land Grant Office, and that's what's here. It's basically those we provide technical assistance to individuals such as ranchers and farmers, both in the eastern, and northern Navajo agency districts. So if you fall in the Eastern District in 15, 16, 19, and 20, we can assist you in providing a basic conservation plan. And if you're in Northern, we help producers both in districts 9, 12, and 13. So if you are a grazing permit holder and you're needing assistance and developing your conservation plan, we do collaborate with both the BIA, Eastern and Northern agencies. So we collaborate with them and helping their producers develop a conservation plan. And just to let you guys know, this is free of charge. If you need more information, please give me contact info. And if you have any questions, I'll give you my feedback. And if you're in need of assistance or know someone that needs assistance in any northern or eastern, send them our way and we can give them the help that they need. And this is free of charge. So our conservation planning program are all located on our website. We're also on Facebook. And like I've mentioned from the beginning of this webinar, is we have all of our webinars recorded and posted on our YouTube channel. So our YouTube channel is called Navajo Sustainable Agriculture Project. So you'll see all of our webinars that we've hosted located on our channel platform. And we release our bi-monthly newsletter. So you'll be seeing our September and October newsletter coming out soon. If you're not subscribed to that, feel free to head to our website to subscribe to our newsletter. And here's my information if you want to get a hold of me to host a workshop, both in Eastern or Northern, let me know. And if you are needing more information in the conservation planning process, here's our information, myself and Shirley. So that concludes our webinar this evening. I just want to say thank you all for joining us, and I hope that all the information you took today, you guys implement that information to your garden operations. So thank you, everyone, and I hope you guys all have a good rest of your night. I just want to give you guys a quick introduction. We are funded by the USDA Outreach and Assistance for Socially Disadvantaged Farmers and Ranchers and Veteran Farmers and Ranchers program. It's really hard to abbreviate that. So how abbreviate is OASD-VFR. Try saying that 3 more times. But don't ask me to. But we're also, the NSA project is a New Mexico Cooperative Extension Service initiative in delivering in collaboration with 2 of our main project partners. You see their logos here on the screen. One of them is Dene College, Land Grant Office, and COPE, which stands for Community Outreach Patient Empowerment. So both of these, one is from Saley, and the Dene College Land Grant, and the COPE, which some of you may know or may not have known, they're from Gallup. So moving on into the goals and the objectives as for the NSA project is 1, basically is to improve the operations profitability and sustainability of socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers and veteran farmers and ranchers program. This will include our educational programming, which consists of a lot of in-person workshops that we are trying to coordinate along with our project partners, Dene College, Land Grant, and COPE. You may have joined us from the previous workshop that we have hosted, one of them being herd health, and some of you may have seen our livestock first aid trainings that we've hosted along with the Dene College Land Grant Office, and our specialist coming from New Mexico State University, Dr. Wenzel, who did the whole presentation on livestock training and how to look out for minor injuries and how to implement treatments, antibiotics and so forth, and bandages on minor cuts, and making a connection with a veterinarian and so forth. So more into livestock herdsmanship and animal husbandry. And we also increase our producers' knowledge in the use of USDA programs. Most of you on here may have got acquainted with NRCS programs, FSA programs, rural development and risk management agency and services of those of other resource providers such as the NNDA, the Navajo Nation Department of Ag, and their programs, the agriculture infrastructure funds that some of you may have gotten acquainted with. And providing those resources and gathering, you guys may have attended our USDA resource fair, where we gather local field reps from San Juan and McKinley County and Cibola County as well. And they share what local programs a lot of producers apply for and how to apply for them. And lastly, increase the local production and consumption of fresh fruits and vegetables and healthy foods by Navajo families and individuals through our gardening programs that we are currently after. So that kind of gives you an overview of our big goals and objectives that we have so far. And we're still pushing a lot. So stay tuned for our upcoming events. So we do have a full month of activities and workshops that I would like to share with you guys.